It was a crisp morning, and the faint aroma of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee filled the air at Mary's roadside diner, the town's favorite breakfast spot. The diner buzzed with its usual charm as locals chatted and sipped on their morning brew. Among them was Charles Whitaker, a 72-year-old retired school principal, known for his dignified demeanor and warm smile. Charles pushed open the door, his cane tapping softly against the tiled floor. This was his cherished daily ritual, a simple pleasure in the golden years of his life. But this morning was different. As Charles approached the counter, the hum of the diner was drowned out by the raucous laughter of a group of bikers. Leather-clad and loud, they had commandeered the space, their motorcycles parked haphazardly outside. One of them, a burly man with a shaved head and tattoos that snaked up his arms, leaned against the counter, his boots scraping audibly against the stool as he shifted. "Hey, old man," the man sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "Did you get lost? This ain't your kind of place." Charles paused, his eyes calm but resolute. "Just here for my coffee," he replied evenly, ignoring the stares of other patrons who were now intently focused on their plates, unwilling to get involved. The leader laughed harshly, his grin spreading as he blocked Charles's path to the counter. "Not today. This diner's ours now. Maybe you should head on back to where you came from, old-timer." The tension was palpable, the air heavy with an unspoken challenge. Charles's grip tightened on his cane, but his voice remained unwavering. "I've lived in this town my entire life, and I'll have my coffee, whether you like it or not." The man's smirk faltered for a brief moment, but he quickly regained his bravado, stepping closer. "Big words for someone so frail. Let's see if you're as tough as you talk." Before Charles could respond, Emma Garcia, the diner's owner, burst from the kitchen, her hands on her hips. "Enough. You're scaring my customers. Get out before I call the cops," she demanded, her voice carrying an edge that left no room for argument. The leader glared at Emma but eventually backed off, motioning for his crew to follow. "We'll leave, but you haven't seen the last of us," he snarled, casting one last menacing glance at Charles before exiting the diner. The room exhaled collectively, the patrons slowly resuming their conversations. Charles, still composed, nodded to Emma in gratitude and took a seat at the counter. As the waitress placed his coffee in front of him, she murmured, "You're braver than most, Mr. Whitaker." He gave her a small smile but said nothing. The encounter lingered in his mind long after the bikers had gone, and the usual warmth of the diner felt tinged with unease. Charles couldn't shake the thought that this was far from over. Later that evening, as he sat in his modest home, the confrontation replayed in his mind. He knew standing up to bullies was the right thing to do, but he couldn't help but wonder how the town would respond if they came back. For Charles, this was not just about a cup of coffee. It was about standing against intimidation and proving that age and dignity were no match for cruelty and cowardice. The quiet of the night was broken only by the faint hum of crickets as Charles resolved to do more than just defend his own pride. This was his town, and no one had the right to make its people feel unsafe. What would you do if you faced such a challenge? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over Charles Whitaker's modest home. He sat at his kitchen table, the events of the day replaying in his mind like a broken record. The confrontation with the bikers at Mary's diner had stirred something deep within him. Allowing fear and prejudice to fester would only embolden bullies like them. It was time to act, and Charles knew he couldn't do it alone. Charles reached for the phone and dialed his granddaughter, Lily Whitaker. A college junior with a passion for community outreach, Lily had always admired her grandfather's unwavering moral compass. When Charles recounted the incident, her voice was a mixture of disbelief and determination. "Grandpa, you've always taught us to stand up for what's right," she said. "Let's do something about this together." Her words lit a spark in Charles. Together, they brainstormed ways to unite the town against intimidation and hatred. Lily suggested organizing a public event to showcase the town's unity and resilience. It would be a bold statement, a refusal to let fear rule their lives. The next morning, armed with determination, Charles made a list of people to contact. First on the list was Eric Mitchell, a former student who had grown up to become a respected attorney. Eric was known for his eloquence and passion for justice. When Charles explained the idea of Stand Up for Unity event, Eric didn't hesitate. "Count me in," he said firmly. Next, Charles called Diane Fletcher, a journalist for the town's local paper. Diane had a knack for amplifying important stories. "This is exactly what our town needs," she said. "I'll make sure everyone hears about it." With Eric and Diane on board, the plan began to take shape. The event would take place at Mary's Diner, the very site of the confrontation. It would feature speeches, live music, and a shared meal to celebrate the strength of the community. Lily created colorful flyers and spread the word through social media, while Diane penned a heartfelt article in the town paper, urging neighbors to join the cause. Word spread like wildfire. The town's response was overwhelming. Neighbors, business owners, and even local high school students offered their support. Musicians volunteered to perform, and a catering company donated food. The diner's owner, Emma Garcia, vowed to make the event a success. "This isn't just about my diner," she said. "It's about all of us." As the days passed, the anticipation grew. Charles found himself fielding calls from old friends and strangers alike, all eager to contribute. It wasn't just about standing up to the bikers. It was about reclaiming the town's identity as a place of kindness and mutual respect. The night before the event, Charles stood in his living room, gazing at the framed photographs of his late wife and their family. "I hope you be proud of me," he whispered, his voice tinged with emotion. This wasn't just about his dignity. It was about leaving a legacy of courage and compassion. Finally, the day arrived. The diner's parking lot was transformed into a vibrant gathering space. Tables were set with checkered tablecloths, and strings of fairy lights added a festive touch. A stage was erected near the entrance, adorned with a banner that read, "Stand Up for Unity." As the crowd began to gather, the atmosphere was electric. Families arrived hand in hand. Neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles, and children ran around with balloons. Charles, dressed in his Sunday best, stood near the stage, his cane steady in his hand. The first speaker was Eric, who captivated the crowd with his heartfelt words. "This town has always been my home," he said, "and home is where we stand together, no matter what tries to divide us." Next came Diane, who spoke of the power of unity and the importance of standing against hate. "What happened here is a reminder that silence only fuels fear," she said. "But when we speak out, we change the narrative." The event reached its crescendo when Charles took the stage. The crowd quieted, their eyes fixed on the man who had inspired them all. "Thank you for being here today," he began, his voice steady and clear. "This isn't about me. It's about us. Together, we can ensure that kindness and respect define our community." As Charles stepped down, the crowd erupted into applause. Music filled the air, and the shared meal became a symbol of togetherness. Strangers became friends, and old grievances were set aside. The event was a resounding success, a testament to the power of collective action. But as the sun set and the festivities wound down, Charles couldn't help but wonder if the bikers would return. The thought lingered, but it didn't overshadow the joy of the day. For now, the town had made its stance clear. Unity would always triumph over fear. The morning of the event dawned bright and clear, the sky painted in soft hues of gold and pink. The diner's parking lot, usually a quiet space for a handful of cars, now buzzed with activity. Cars lined the streets, motorcycles roared in the distance, and a sea of townsfolk gathered, their murmurs of anticipation growing louder by the minute. A makeshift stage had been set up near the diner's entrance, adorned with the banner reading, "Stand Up for Unity." Tables with checkered tablecloths were laden with food, and a small band tuned their instruments to provide the day's music. Charles Whitaker, dressed in his finest suit, stood at the edge of the stage, his cane steady in his hand. At 72, his calm presence and dignified demeanor commanded respect. Beside him stood his granddaughter Lily, her vibrant energy balancing his stoic resolve. Together, they watched as neighbors, families, and even curious onlookers from nearby towns filled the space. "This is more than I ever imagined," Charles said, his voice tinged with emotion. Lily smiled, squeezing his hand. "It's because of you," Grandpa, you stood up when it mattered most. But the joy of the gathering was soon shadowed by the arrival of the bikers. The low rumble of their engines grew louder as they pulled into the parking lot, forming an intimidating line of gleaming motorcycles. At the front was Vince, their leader, his leather jacket catching the sunlight. He dismounted, his movements deliberate, a smug grin plastered across his face. The crowd fell silent, the tension palpable. Vince leaned casually against his bike, surveying the gathering like a predator sizing up its prey. Well, look at this, he drawled. A little party to celebrate the old man's bravery. How touching. Charles stepped forward, his cane tapping against the ground with each measured step. He ascended the stage, his calm gaze meeting Vince's challenging stare. The crowd watched in hushed anticipation as Charles took the microphone. Good afternoon, he began, his voice steady and strong. Today, we're not here to point fingers or assign blame. We're here to show that this town stands for respect, kindness, and unity. The crowd erupted in applause, but the bikers jeered, their mocking laughter slicing through the cheers. Vince stepped forward, his boots crunching against the gravel. You think some words and songs are going to change anything, old man? He scoffed. Charles didn't flinch. He met Vince's gaze, his tone unwavering. Change starts with courage, he replied. And it takes more strength to build bridges than to tear them down. For a moment, the air hung heavy with tension. Then, to everyone's surprise, a young biker from Vince's group stepped forward. His name was Jake, a newcomer to the gang, his uncertainty evident in his hesitant movements. Maybe he's right, Jake said, his voice quiet but firm. We don't have to keep doing this. This isn't who we are. The crowd murmured, and even some of Vince's allies exchanged uneasy glances. Vince's grin faltered, replaced by a dark scowl. He stepped closer to Jake, his voice low and menacing. You're either with us or against us, he hissed. Jake stood his ground. I'm tired of being a part of something that spreads fear instead of respect. This ends here. The murmur of the crowd grew louder, emboldened by Jake's defiance. Vince's composure cracked as he realized the tide was turning. His allies' loyalty wavered under the weight of the community's unified stance. One by one, the bikers began to step back, their resolve crumbling in the face of collective disapproval. Vince, now isolated, let out a frustrated growl. You'll regret this, he spat, but his words carried no weight. He turned sharply, mounting his motorcycle and roaring out of the parking lot. His departure was met with a collective sigh of relief, the tension dissipating like a storm passing. Charles took the microphone again, his voice carrying a note of triumph. This is what happens when we stand together, he said. Fear and hate cannot thrive where there is courage and unity. The crowd erupted into cheers, their applause echoing across the parking lot. Music filled the air once more, and the shared meal became a celebration of their victory. Strangers became friends, and the town's spirit of camaraderie was stronger than ever. Jake approached Charles, his expression a mix of gratitude and regret. I'm sorry for what happened before, he said. You've shown me a better way. Charles placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. It's never too late to choose the right path, he said with a warm smile. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the diner's parking lot was filled with laughter and music. The event was more than just a stand against intimidation. It was a testament to the power of community and the courage to confront fear with hope. For Charles, the day was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, unity and kindness could prevail. As he looked around at the smiling faces, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was his town, and together, they had reclaimed it. The days following the event at Mary's Diner brought a palpable change to the town. A place once marked by the shadow of fear and division now brimmed with hope and renewed purpose. Emma Garcia, the diner's owner, decided to channel the momentum into something lasting. She approached Lily Whitaker with an idea that would ensure the spirit of unity endured. Lily, Emma said one afternoon as they cleaned up after the event, why don't we host monthly community dinners? This diner can be more than a place for meals. It can be the heart of our town. Lily's face lit up. That's a fantastic idea, Emma. We could invite people from all walks of life, bring in local artists and speakers, and make it a celebration of what this town stands for. Word of their plans spread quickly, and soon, volunteers from across the town offered to help. Teachers, shop owners, students, and retirees, all eager to contribute, came forward with ideas and resources. Charles Whitaker, who had become an emblem of resilience and wisdom, was the first to sign up as a regular speaker. His stories of perseverance and the importance of standing together resonated deeply, inspiring all who attended. Meanwhile, Jake, the young biker who had stood up to Vince at the event, found himself at a crossroads. For years, he'd sought belonging in the biker gang, but Charles's words and the town's unity had awakened something in him. Determined to make amends, Jake walked into the diner one afternoon, his leather jacket noticeably absent. Charles was seated at his usual corner table, a cup of coffee in hand and a newspaper spread before him. Jake approached hesitantly, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Mr. Whitaker," Jake began, his voice tinged with regret. "I want to apologize for my part in what happened. I didn't realize how much harm we were causing. I want to make things right. Can I help with your events?" Charles set his coffee down and regarded Jake thoughtfully. The young man's sincerity was evident, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and hope. "Jake," Charles said after a moment, "it takes courage to admit when you've been wrong. Of course, you're welcome to help. Redemption isn't about forgetting the past. It's about using it to build a better future." Jake's involvement quickly became a symbol of redemption, inspiring others in the town to reflect on their own prejudices and actions. He threw himself into the work, helping organize events, setting up tables, and even sharing his story during one of the dinners. "I was lost," he admitted to a captivated audience. "But this community showed me what it means to belong. Thank you for giving me a second chance." The monthly dinners grew into something extraordinary. Each gathering brought new faces and fresh energy. Local artists performed heartfelt songs, students presented projects on inclusivity, and seniors shared stories of the town's history. The once divided community transformed into a close-knit family, bound by their shared commitment to kindness and mutual respect. Charles watched with quiet pride as the town came alive. He often found himself reflecting on his late wife, imagining how proud she'd be of the legacy they were creating. On one particular evening, as he stood to address the crowd, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "This town has always been special," he said, his voice steady. "But what we've built here is more than I ever dreamed possible. Thank you for proving that unity and compassion are stronger than fear. Let's carry this spirit forward, not just tonight, but every day." The crowd erupted into applause, their faces glowing with admiration and hope. Among them was Vince, the former leader of the bikers, standing in the back with a somber expression. He'd returned to the town quietly, watching from a distance as his gang dissolved and his influence waned. Vince's presence hadn't gone unnoticed by Charles, who approached him after the event. "Vince," Charles said, extending a hand, "everyone deserves a chance to change. If you're ready, there's a place for you here." Vince hesitated, his hardened exterior faltering under Charles's genuine warmth. He shook the older man's hand, his voice gruff but sincere. "I've made a lot of mistakes," he admitted. "Maybe it's time I start making up for them." As weeks turned into months, the town's transformation continued. The diner became a hub of connection and creativity, a place where barriers dissolved and friendships blossomed. Emma and Lily's vision had become a reality, with the help of a community that refused to let fear define them. For Charles, the journey was more than just a stand against intimidation. It was a testament to the power of resilience, the courage to confront adversity, and the boundless potential of a united community. As he sat at the diner one evening, surrounded by laughter and music, he felt a profound sense of peace. "This is just the beginning," he thought, a smile spreading across his face. "Together, we can achieve anything." Months later, Mary's Diner held a grand reopening, transformed from a simple eatery into a vibrant symbol of unity. The highlight of the day was a stunning mural painted across the diner's exterior, a vibrant scene showcasing the town's diversity, featuring smiling faces of all ages and backgrounds, framed by a banner that read, "Together we thrive." The crowd gathered in eager anticipation, their chatter filled with excitement and pride. Charles Whitaker stood before them, his heart swelling with emotion. Dressed in his signature suit and tie, he cut a dignified figure as he approached the microphone. The sea of familiar faces, neighbors, friends, even former skeptics, reminded him of how far they had come. Taking a deep breath, he began. "What happened here isn't just my story," he said, his voice steady but filled with passion. "It's our story. This mural, this diner, this gathering. It's a testament to what happens when we choose compassion over fear and courage over complacency. We've shown that even in the face of adversity, unity can prevail." Applause erupted, echoing through the lot. Among the crowd stood Jake, the young biker who had become a symbol of redemption, and Vince, the former leader of the gang. Vince hung back, his expression unreadable, but his presence spoke volumes. The event had brought together an extraordinary mix of people, individuals who might never have crossed paths otherwise, united by a shared vision for a better community. Jake stepped forward to speak next. Nervously adjusting the microphone, he glanced at Charles, who gave him an encouraging nod. Gathering his thoughts, Jake began. "A few months ago, I was part of the problem. I'd let anger and bitterness drive my choices. But this town, and Mr. Whitaker in particular, showed me there's a better way. If I can change, so can anyone." The crowd listened intently as Jake's words struck a chord. He shared his journey, the mistakes he'd made, the people he'd hurt, and the decision to turn his life around. By the time he stepped down, the applause was deafening. His story had inspired a ripple effect, encouraging others to confront their own prejudices and strive for growth. The day continued with music, laughter, and shared meals. Local artists performed heartfelt songs about resilience and unity, while children played games in the lot, their laughter filling the air. Charles mingled with the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging kind words. Each interaction reaffirmed his belief in the town's potential. As the sun began to set, Charles found himself standing beside Vince. The once intimidating man now seemed quieter, reflective. "Quite the event," Vince remarked, his voice gruff but softer than usual. "It's a start," Charles replied with a smile. "But it's what comes next that truly matters." Vince nodded, his gaze fixed on the mural. "I've got a lot to make up for," he admitted. "But seeing all this, it makes me want to try." Charles extended a hand. "Redemption starts with a single step. You're welcome to join us, Vince. There's always room for more hands and hearts." Vince hesitated for a moment before shaking Charles's hand firmly. "Thank you. I'll be here." As the evening wound down, the community gathered for a final moment of reflection. Charles took the stage once more, the glow of the mural behind him casting a warm light over the crowd. "This diner may be small," he began, "but it holds a big lesson. Change doesn't come from one person or one event. It comes from all of us, working together every day. Let's carry this spirit forward. Let's make kindness, courage, and unity the foundation of our lives." The applause that followed was thunderous, a fitting conclusion to a day that would be remembered for years to come. The grand reopening wasn't just a celebration of the diner's transformation. It was a celebration of the town's newfound identity. In the weeks that followed, the mural became a landmark, drawing visitors from neighboring towns. Mary's Diner flourished, hosting monthly dinners that continued to bring people together. Emma and Lily's vision of a communal hub had blossomed into something extraordinary, with Charles's wisdom and leadership guiding the way. Jake's involvement deepened, and he became a mentor to local youth, sharing his experiences and helping them navigate their own challenges. Vince, true to his word, showed up regularly, offering his time and effort to help with events. His journey of redemption inspired others, proving that change was possible for anyone willing to make the effort. For Charles, the legacy of courage he had hoped to leave behind was no longer a dream. It was a reality. As he sat at the diner one evening, watching families and friends share laughter and stories, he felt a profound sense of peace. The town had become everything he knew it could be, and more. With a smile, he raised his coffee cup in a quiet toast to the community that had made it all possible. "Here's to courage," he thought. "May it guide us always." As the first anniversary of the Stand Up for Unity event approached, the town buzzed with excitement. Mary's Diner, once just a roadside stop, had become the heart of the community, a place where barriers dissolved and connections flourished. Charles Whitaker sat by the window, his coffee cooling as he gazed at the vibrant mural outside. It depicted scenes of resilience and unity, a visual chronicle of the town's transformation. For Charles, the anniversary was more than just a celebration. It was a time of deep reflection. He thought back to that fateful day when he had faced down Vince and his gang of bikers. The fear, the humiliation, and the sheer weight of standing alone had left a lasting mark. But what lingered even more vividly was the outpouring of support that followed. It reminded him that courage was not about acting without fear, but about moving forward despite it. The diner's doors swung open, and Emma Garcia walked in, carrying a box of decorations for the event. "Charles, stop daydreaming and give me a hand," she teased, her smile bright. Despite her playful tone, her eyes reflected the same pride Charles felt. Together, they began preparing the diner for the celebration. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the townspeople gathered in the parking lot. Strings of lights twinkled overhead, and the scent of freshly baked pies filled the air. Emma had gone all out, with tables laden with food and a small stage set up for speeches and performances. The crowd's energy was infectious, a mixture of anticipation and nostalgia. As the event began, Emma stepped onto the stage to welcome everyone. "A year ago, this diner was just a place to grab a meal," she said. "Today, it's a symbol of what we can achieve when we stand together. Thank you all for making this possible." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the night. Charles watched from the side, his heart swelling with pride. Emma beckoned him to the stage, handing him a small plaque as he approached the microphone. The plaque read, "To Charles Whitaker, for inspiring a brighter future for all." The crowd cheered even louder, their voices filled with gratitude and admiration. Charles held the plaque for a moment, his hands trembling slightly. Then, with a steady breath, he began to speak. "A year ago, I walked into this diner expecting nothing more than a cup of coffee," he said. "Instead, I found myself facing a challenge that tested every ounce of courage I had. But what I learned that day is that courage isn't about standing alone. It's about standing together. It's about choosing kindness and determination in the face of hate." His words resonated deeply, the crowd hanging on every syllable. Charles glanced at the mural behind him, its vibrant colors glowing in the soft light. "This mural isn't just art," he continued. "It's a reminder of what we can achieve when we let compassion guide us. Let's keep building this future, one step at a time." The applause that followed was thunderous. Charles stepped back, nodding to Emma as Jake took the stage. The young man, once a member of Vince's gang, now stood as a symbol of redemption and change. "A year ago, I was part of the problem," Jake began, his voice steady. "But this community, and especially Mr. Whitaker, showed me that it's never too late to turn things around. If I can change, so can anyone." Jake's heartfelt confession drew tears and applause, his journey inspiring others to reflect on their own growth. He stepped down to a chorus of cheers, the crowd's admiration evident. As the night progressed, the event transformed into a celebration. Local musicians performed, children laughed as they played under the string lights, and neighbors shared stories over slices of pie. Charles wandered through the crowd, his heart brimming with gratitude. At one point, he spotted Vince standing at the edge of the lot. The former gang leader had been attending events quietly, never drawing attention to himself. Charles approached him, offering a warm smile. "It's good to see you here, Vince," Charles said. Vince nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You've built something amazing here, Charles. I've got a lot of regrets, but seeing this, it makes me want to do better." "You've already taken the first step," Charles replied. "The door is always open for those willing to change." The two men shook hands, a silent understanding passing between them. Vince's presence was a testament to the power of forgiveness and the possibility of transformation. As the evening wound down, Charles found himself back at his favorite spot by the window. He watched as the last of the guests trickled out, their laughter lingering in the air. Emma joined him, a cup of coffee in hand. "You've done something incredible, Charles," she said. "This town is better because of you." Charles shook his head modestly. "It's not about me, Emma. It's about all of us. This community has always had the potential. It just needed a spark." The two sat in comfortable silence, watching as the mural's colors shimmered under the streetlights. For Charles, the evening was a culmination of everything he had fought for, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the boundless potential of unity. When he finally left the diner, the streets were quiet, but his heart was full. As he walked home, the cool night air carried with it a sense of hope. The Stand Up for Unity event had been more than just a moment in time. It was the foundation of a legacy that would endure for generations. For Charles, the journey wasn't over. There would always be challenges to face and bridges to build. But as he stepped into his home and set the plaque on the mantle, he felt a profound sense of peace. "Together, we've proven that change is possible," he thought, a smile spreading across his face. "And together, we can achieve anything,